Okay, and we're back with the
Hello, welcome back. Glad to be back, rather.
excellent. Yeah, actually, what I had to do, guys, is I had to take care of my dog for some reason. He was complaining about not being with me, and he likes to do that whenever I'm talking to somebody. I think he knows I'm talking to someone. He gets jealous, whatever, and he starts to whine, and it
hmm
distracts me. Be that as it may, uh, now he's with my son, so he's fine. He has company. Um, so let's switch gear and let's talk about Jenn Dudley a little bit.
Okay.
Okay. Um, so where were you born and where were you raised? If you don't mind sharing.
I was born in Houston, Texas, and grew up in around Texas, San Antonio and Lubbock, so West Texas.
Oh, I love San Antonio. I've been there once. It's a very funky city in a way, right?
Yeah,
It's different. I think it
yeah,
has,
I love that. There's a lot of culture. It's kind of
yeah, not very typical.
yeah, maybe
Type
not what
things.
you'd expect of Texas.
Well, any city actually. It has some character actually. So I love that city. And then you went to school somewhere in Texas, I'm assuming. And then where did you go to university?
Undergrad, I went to Arizona State in Phoenix, and I actually got a graduate degree back in Texas at Texas Tech in Lubbock. So,
Nice, nice. And what did you study?
undergrad was broadcast journalism, and got a graduate degree in Master's of Education, so instructional design and technology.
Nice, nice. And have you always done podcasting? What kind of other jobs did you do before you got into
I
this
have a very
passion?
winding career path.
Mm.
That I worked in video production in a variety of fields. I worked on an army base and a cruise ship, and ended up
Wow.
doing training videos at a hospital, um, and which kind of got me into the training side of things. So that was when I got a graduate degree and moved to Chicago and worked in the e-learning space for a while, and that kind of led into more into technology. I went through one of the one over the first coding boot camp here in Chicago a number of years ago now, and gosh, just about a decade ago. It's hard to believe, and that got me into the tech industry, and so worked in and around tech for the last yeah, roughly decade. So came back around to podcasting, which interestingly enough kind of combines a lot of the things I'd done in
Yeah,
my past.
that's great. I mean, when I hear people who have lots of different experiences, I'm jealous because it really makes your life very rich, because you've seen a lot of things and you pick up skills that otherwise, and so that's fantastic. Do you see yourself right now? If I were to say, give me like, how would you define yourself as such? Are you a technologist?
Mm.
Are you a podcast consultant? I know it's very hard to
Me
pin it
as an
down to you.
individual,
As a
um,
professional person, and then we'll talk about
yeah,
you as an individual.
okay. Well, I just like me versus the business. So
Yes.
I think me professionally, I don't know. I think I'm kind of a master generalist, um, because I do have an eclectic background and kind of
Hmm.
bring those skills into whatever I do, and that perspective. Um, and the other thing kind of a general aspect is I like roles that are a bit of a bridge. So whether it's between like sales and technology, or the developers and clients. So being able to kind of translate between different audiences is something that I enjoy doing, and I think again my background kind of
Hmm.
helps me with.
Yeah. Yeah. And would you say right now, like, core of who you are is somebody who is deep into podcasting, or is it deep into the technology podcasting? How would you position yourself within that specific space?
Uh, yeah, um, I it's a bit of both, and because it's certainly, podcasting and the space in it. Um, but again, I don't know, personally, my perspective tends to be bridging those different things because, and connecting people who go deep into all of those areas, because I think that, one big part of podcasting is audio engineering, as an example, and I wouldn't consider myself an audio engineer. I'm familiar, and I can, know my way around a audio workstation and can edit and everything else, but I really rely on the people who have an ear for it to be able to do those things. And that's really my perspective on kind of like podcasting and tech and marketing, is I like having a foot in all of those areas, and then working with people who go deep into all of their respective kind of expertise.
So you're like a producer kind of a thing, but not necessarily of a specific show, but of the process of launching a podcast. Is you bring in all the right people, right technologies, processes? Is that close to?
Yeah, and again, this is, that my answer was kind of speaking for me as a professional, as opposed to, I'd probably have a more definitive for the business and kind of what we do for our clients and as a business.
But the CEO of a company usually, what they want to do next in their life is going to shape the company that they're leading.
Sure.
Right?
Yes. This
So I
is a
think
little
we talked
terrifying, but
before.
true.
Yeah, I think we thought. And tell me if you prefer not to touch on it yet. Like the next steps for you, what you guys want to do as far as a company. You want to touch on that?
Sure. Yeah, and it's an interesting space or a moment right now, I think, in terms of what's next. As 2020 was quite a year, I think, for everyone, personally, professionally, otherwise.
Yeah.
Collectively. And so really looking at this year and 3 years into the business as a time to be a little reflective and look forward. And some of the things that I'm excited about and moving forward is diving back into tech solutions. When we started the business, the plan was always to create kind of SaaS tools at the enterprise level in the podcasting space. The market wasn't quite where we wanted it to be at the time. I think it is there now, and having been in it for 3 years, have some ideas, I think, of where the needs are in that space. And the other thing that I think is also reflective of the growth of the industry and the maturity, increasing maturity of the space, is looking at auditing existing podcasts. So certainly one of the main things that we do and have focused on is helping businesses launch new shows, and we certainly will continue to do that. But I think now there's a lot of content out there. People have gotten started, which is amazing, and then it's figuring out, what do I do with this thing, or what have I missed? And sometimes that's hard to do when you're in it, and so being able to have an outside perspective. And so we're working on some product solutions for that will be some automated, so that you can get kind of like quick answers and results, and then following on with some more consultative kind of hands-on advice.
Yeah, that's great. Wonderful. So let me ask you this question. Since the the COVID thing and all, we all gotten used to Zoom. I used to hate being on Zoom, and then I started attending, but I would never show my face. And then half of the people wouldn't show their face, and then it became where if you don't show your face, it means something's wrong with you. So everybody became very comfortable with showing themselves and talking like this, right? Which wasn't. I think there was an accelerated maturity of this. So are you seeing more and more podcasts that are visual like this? And if so, does that change the way you guys are doing business?
It's a good question. There's a lot of really good things and, associated challenges that I think came with the level of comfort around Zoom. I think there are a lot of podcasts that are getting recorded over Zoom, which you can do. Um, and there's an argument to be made for
Pure.
convenience. I won't go
Yeah.
down that rabbit hole.
Hmm.
Um, so yes, I think you are seeing a lot more video podcasts
Hmm.
and people recording it. Something that even if a show isn't um, publishing the video, I think
Mm.
having a tool
Mm.
um, like Zoom, or any
Mm.
of the others where it has the video component is helpful if you've got an interview-based show,
Mm.
just because you have the visual interaction.
Mm.
It's a, kind of a different environment, even if you don't want to, again, record or publish that video. But you are seeing a lot more people who are wanting to
Mhm.
publish the video, which we've, um, it's like figuring out the right way to do that. It has implications for post-production and whether or not you edit. There's,
Mhm.
much more limitations on editing when the video
Yeah.
is involved.
Yeah.
And then also in the distribution.
Distribution.
Video podcasts is actually a thing, and there are a handful of players that will support that. I don't know how much actual adoption is on the end user standpoint. I think for the most part, people tend to cross-publish to YouTube or to their website.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or use snippets. Actually, that's something that we see
Right.
quite a lot,
Yeah.
is like just using it for a soundbite here or there.
Yeah. 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 I think. I think if I were talking to you, like seeing you, right? I think it might be slightly different conversation because I don't know exactly if you're agreeing with me or not. And I think the audience also. I'm not saying it's bad. I'm just saying it's different. I don't think it's just. I don't think it's. I think if you were talking to each other, I think there'll be a little bit of a different dynamic, perhaps, right? I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Because now I can see exactly how you feel. Or maybe you can't roll your eyes, whereas if it was right, we were talking about it before. If I was talking, if I was saying something silly, like you roll your eyes, like
Mm-hmm.
yeah, that's right, all right. But you can't do that here. So I wonder what the impact is. I think one thing, like you said, maybe it provides uh, because the output could be different. Because I did a couple of these, and then when I went, there were a couple of moments in the video that I didn't like. It
Mm-hmm.
was me basically, right? Messing up, right? And so I just in the video it wasn't easy to slice because you'd see that it was sliced,
Right.
right? But in the audio, I was able to very easily make make me sound a lot smarter than I am, right? By just slicing stuff out. So it's easier to. So I experienced that firsthand. You know that inside out. But that's the thing, right? That video is not easy to manipulate. And then the other thing is the social audio. Have you gotten
Mm-hmm.
into that whole mess of social audio?
It's interesting because we've certainly had people who've asked about, Clubhouse and kind of interested in how to take advantage of that space or how it plays or doesn't with their podcast, but not as much as you might think.
Hmm.
And, I think that whole space is going, it's like everything else. It's going to have a very similar curve. Like there was an initial hype and interest, and certainly the way they rolled it out and having exclusivity and all of those pieces, I think, contributed to the energy there. And I think it'll be interesting. I'm very interested to see what happens after that kind of first wave and it settles in. And really now that you've got a lot of the, big players doing their own kind of copycat version of what that looks like. In my mind, it's has a place, but it's just very different. That synchronous two-way audio interaction is just a very different experience than like a traditional podcast, even conversation like we're having, or asynchronously and kind of having a playlist. And so how those interact, and I think really you can see them either as serving two separate needs, or potentially, maybe I have a podcast and I want to have more engagement with my audience, and so I've got, I can have a space in one of the kind of social audio
Yeah.
spaces. So I think that's really where I'm interested to see how things shake out and how they can kind of work together. And a lot of it, though, comes down to the challenges of growing a community because, it's like, where is your audience? If your audience isn't in those spaces, it may not have a lot of usefulness for you as a business or as an extension of something like a podcast.
Yeah. Well, I have been in multiple rooms, and with both in Clubhouse and in Twitter Spaces, and what I've noticed is that even though they go for an hour, it never gets too deep. It's always pretty superficial. Not that it's not meaningful, because there are more people who need to talk, and there's a lot of
Mm-hmm.
repetition, and that's okay. It's just like you said, it's different, right? I think you can do more in depth if you have a podcast and it's prepared for, and people
Mm-hmm.
prepare, or even if they don't prepare, one side prepares and the other person knows what they're talking about, right? And so you can go deep into conversations. That's what I like. That's what I like about podcasts. What I like about the social audio is I go there just to pick up ideas. To be honest with you, just
Mm-hmm.
to go and steal a few ideas and just run with it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because they usually people say things they don't even know that are interesting because maybe they live in their own world and like, oh, that's an interesting insight. I can use it this way, so I can cross pollinate in a way.
Sure.
And when you cross pollinate, you don't necessarily need to go deep into people's thinking and all that. They just need to pick up ideas. So for me, idea picking, at least for me, right, is great there. And then you hear a lot more voices, people who are not, or coming from different angles, right?
Sure.
Um, and that makes it interesting. Um, so what's the next big step for the company, Dante 32 in 2021 and then into 2022? Um,
Yeah.
is that
Well, like I mentioned, oh, go ahead. What were you
No,
gonna say?
because I think the space is going to continue to grow. Not only the space of podcasts, but like we were talking, like this audio thing, it's manifesting
Mm-hmm.
itself in 17 different ways, right? Alexa, Google, and you have these
Sure.
websites, and you have these agency branding agencies who can help you with your audio branding, and then you have these academies and so on and so forth, right? So I think you're in a space, and I think podcasting was the leader, was the one who just started all this movement about taking audio seriously. So I think the space is going to continue to grow. That's a challenge. Like, where do you go? What do you focus on when you have so much opportunity, right? So how do you guys handling that?
Well, I mean, on a personal level, focus is always a
Focus, right?
continuous challenge for me, and
Yeah.
I actually,
Same here.
though, think that that is, I'm going to lean into that challenge, if that makes any sense,
Hmm.
in that I've spent a lot of time listening to the space, and um, I want to, both as a person and a creator and as a business, am right now in the process of narrowing in on what can we do and offer that will be additive and not yet another thing or
Yeah.
more noise in that space. And
Hmm.
I actually think that there is an opportunity to, um, I feel like curate is
Hmm.
almost an outdated or overused word, or it was a handful of years ago, but really sort of like curate or way make, like help make sense of how all of those things fit together,
Right.
especially
Yeah.
with the different ways of using audio. Um, that's easy for people to pick up on. And, you know, it's the downside to the massive amount of information we all have access to. It's amazing, and I love that there's more access for all kinds of
Hmm.
voices, literally and figuratively, and that's great. And it also just creates all of this volume that you have to figure out what to do with, and there's
Yeah.
just a lot of overload, I think. And so figuring out how to help, in Dante 32's case, businesses and brands be able to be successful and make moves in that arena without having to become an expert in all of it, because their business isn't podcasting or audio, it's
That's right.
whatever their business is. And so I think continuing to, on the services and consulting side, to say, hey, look, like, you focus on what you do best and let us have a handle on all of that and let you know where you need to focus. And we're really working as a business to say, what are the tools that could be created, the actual, say, like software product, that can facilitate that, and not trying to replicate the things that are already happening, but to pull those together in a way that makes them easier to work with.
Yeah. Well, I think 2022 is going to be really interesting because I think we'll see conversions of all these things into something more coherent. I think at this point it's been a lot of noise, so to speak, and all
Yeah.
of that. I think the story is emerging where people are taking audio seriously. And I think there's a lot of opportunity for new people who have done nothing in audio or voice and all to just get into the space. And there are places where you can go and learn about voice and audio, and every single day I learn something not just new but amazing about audio. Like audio can heal you, really. Okay, it's true, right? Every single day it's amazing how ignorant we are after all is said and done about the world we live in.
Right.
But it all makes it exciting, right? That
Yeah.
every single day we'll learn and grow. Jen Dudley, thank you so much for joining me. It has been fun. It went very
Yes.
fast, actually. It was fun.
Yes, definitely. Well, thank you. I really appreciate it. And coherence is a really good word. I like that. So I'm looking
All right.
forward to more of that in the space.
And focus, right? Both of us, we need to focus.
Yes,
Focus.
yes.
All right, take care.
Take care. Thank you.
Bye.